Good afternoon. Please take your seats. Good afternoon. Dear friends, please take your seats. I call this meeting of the General Committee on Political Affairs and Security to order. Colleagues, the agenda for this meeting has been distributed. Could I please invite you to adopt the agenda? Are there any objections to the agenda? The agenda is adopted. Thank you. Before the committee starts its business, please allow me to hand over to Secretary General, who would like to say a few words. Mr. Secretary General, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll just take one moment, as we did yesterday for our friend Reinhold Lopatka, who became European parliamentarian. There is another prominent member of this assembly who has won European elections and will leave our assembly to move to Brussels. I had to, normally I speak out of my mind, but this time I had to take a little notes because the amount of roles that this colleague, and I now name him Christian Vigenin, has covered in this assembly is impressive. Christian, please come to the podium while I'm speaking. So, Christian has been Vice President, First Committee Rapporteur, Special Representative of South Caucasus, Special Representative of Eastern Europe, Chair of the Migration Committee, and several times leader of many election observation missions. A wise leader of our Assembly, a former Foreign Minister. Christian, thank you very much for your leadership, and we have a little present for you.
So thank you. I'm really moved. They told me I should speak from here. Really, thank you very much, colleagues, for the friendship, for the common work, for the successes we had in these almost 10 years, actually, of my work in the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. What I can wish you is to use your time because it's flying quickly. And when you look back, it's good to be able to show that we together have achieved something. Keep the assembly alive, and I think this assembly and this committee is the last, maybe, hope for security, for peace, and you are the people to lay the ground for that. I really wish you success, and you should know that you have a friend in the European Parliament, and we'll continue to keep our contacts, share information, and work together for the goals we have together: security, peace, stability in Europe and in the world. Good luck to all of you, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. We wish you all the best in the European Parliament. May I remind colleagues that the deadline for candidate nominations for the election of committee officers for the next annual session of the Assembly is 6:00 p.m. today. May I also remind colleagues to bring your voting cards to the committee in order to vote in elections of committee officers tomorrow. The Secretariat has also asked me to remind colleagues that if you wish to speak in the debate in the plenary, you need to register by emailing the table office by 2 p.m. tomorrow. We now move to consideration of the next supplementary item referred to us by the Standing Committee. condemning the weaponization of sexual violence in conflict zones, which is supplementary item number 4. There are 3 amendments to this item. I give the floor to Ms. Campione of Italy, the sponsor of this draft resolution. Ms. Campione, you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Grazie Presidente. Gentili colleghi, ho presentato il supplementare item sulla violenza contro le donne come arma di guerra perché è un tema drammaticamente attuale. Sono un avvocato che si occupa di violenza contro le donne e come senatrice ho presentato 2 disegni di legge, uno contro la violenza domestica e il secondo contro le violenze perpetrate contro le donne nei paesi di guerra come arma bellica. Le donne non decidono le guerre, ma ne subiscono le conseguenze, spesso sul loro corpo, che tristemente è divenuto terreno di guerra. Infatti, mentre un tempo le donne erano prede di guerra, ora assistiamo a una degenerazione, tanto che le violenze su di loro sono spesso finalizzate a privarle della capacità di procreare e divengono addirittura armi per sterminare un popolo. Si tratta di un reato universale, così l'ho delineato nel mio disegno di legge in Senato e così ho voluto presentarlo anche nel supplementary item, perché è un crimine che deve coinvolgere tutti i paesi e come tale deve essere perseguito. Sia il mio disegno di legge sia il supplementary item che oggi ci occupa intendono dare applicazione alle convenzioni internazionali che invitano gli Stati aderenti ad adottare nella loro legislazione norme specifiche che sanzionino la violenza contro le donne come arma di guerra. La più recente è la Convenzione di Lubiana, che obbliga gli Stati a reprimere i crimini contro l'umanità e a prestarsi reciproca assistenza giudiziaria per questi reati. Tale reciproca collaborazione si realizza attraverso il principio della giurisdizione universale, secondo il quale ogni Stato può perseguire l'autore del reato quando entra nel suo territorio. Credo che sia importante procedere sia sul piano nazionale sia sul piano internazionale affinché gli autori di questi orrendi crimini non restino impuniti. Soltanto con un lavoro comune che ci veda tutti protagonisti potremo costruire società più sicure per le nuove generazioni, fondate sul riconoscimento della differenza come valore, sull'accettazione dell'altro e sul rispetto. Grazie.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes Mr. Altanak of Turkey for 3 minutes. You're recognized.
Değerli Başkan, değerli üyeler, kıymetli meslektaşım Sayın Susana Campone'nin bu hassas konuyu Agitba gündemine taşıdığı için teşekkür ediyorum. Cinsel şiddet bir insana yöneltilebilecek en alçakça, en aşağılık saldırılarından biridir. Karar tasarısında da ifade edildiği üzere maalesef bu tür saldırılar çatışmaların, ihtilafların yaşandığı alanlarda bir silah olarak kullanılıyor. İnsanlık onurunu ayaklar altına alan bu yöntemi en şiddetli şekilde kınıyorum. Bununla birlikte raporda 3 ülke ismi zikrediliyor. Raporda sadece bu 3 ülke ismine yer vermenin diğer ihtilaf bölgelerinde yaşanan cinsel şiddetin ihmal edildiği izlenimini yaratacağını düşünüyorum. Yakın geçmişte Suriye'de sadece DAEŞ değil, terör örgütü PKK, YPG ve uzantılarının da cinsel şiddete başvurduğuna dair raporlar var. Bu nedenle 1. madde için verilen bir değişiklik önergesinin imzacısı oldum. Maddede geçen ülke isimlerinin silinmesini öneriyoruz. Aynı ülkeler 9. maddede de sayılıyor. Bu ülke isimlerinin ek karar tasarısından çıkarılmasının tasarıyı daha kapsayıcı bir hale getireceğine inanıyorum. Teşekkürler.
Esteemed President, dear members, I would like to thank my esteemed colleague, Ms. Suzanne Campione, for bringing this sensitive issue to the OSCE PA agenda. Sexual violence is one of the most vile and despicable attacks that can be directed at a person. As stated in the draft resolution, unfortunately, such attacks are used as a weapon in areas where conflicts and disputes occur. I condemn this method in the strongest terms as it tramples human dignity. However, the names of 3 countries are mentioned in the report. I think that including only the names of three countries in the report will create the impression that sexual violence in other conflict zones is neglected. Today, detections of sexual violence against Palestinians in Gaza are also included in UN reports. We all know that sexual violence is used as a weapon in Myanmar. Such accidents are also reported in Yemen, Somalia, and other countries. In the recent past, there have been reports that not only ISIS, but also terrorist organization PKK, YPG, and its extensions have resorted to sexual violence in Syria. That's why I signed a proposed amendment to Article 1. We recommend that the country names mentioned in the article be deleted. The same countries are also listed in Article 9. I believe that removing the names of these countries from the additional draft resolution will make the draft more inclusive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As no other delegates have requested to speak, we will move to the consideration of amendments submitted to the draft resolution. Copies of the amendments have been made available. I will call the prosper of the amendment first, and then we'll call any opponent of the amendment. I will then ask the sponsor of the draft resolution, Ms. Campione, for her opinion. I ask speakers to observe the time limit of 3 minutes. Following that, time limit of 1 minute for amendments. Following that, I shall put the amendments to the vote. We are also required to vote on every paragraph to which there are no amendments, as we have done previously to save time and to avoid any votes on items that have broad support. If no amendment has been tabled to a paragraph, and if no one requests a vote on a paragraph, we can consider it adopted. Needless to say, any time a specific vote is requested, we will do so. I call Ms. Bellotti from Italy to propose Amendment 1 to Paragraph 1. You're recognized for 1 minute.
Grazie Presidente. Colleghi, ho presentato questo emendamento che ha lo scopo di rafforzare il tema presentato dalla collega Campione, proprio perché parliamo di una fattispecie di reato gravissima, ho ritenuto di dover eliminare i riferimenti a fattispecie che si sarebbero verificate in determinati paesi, pur comprendendo che si trattasse di una mera esemplificazione. Il mio emendamento mira a rafforzare l'universalità di un fatto gravissimo che non dovrebbe mai verificarsi in nessun posto della terra. Grazie.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against Amendment 1? What is Ms. Campione's opinion of the amendment?
E intanto ringrazio i colleghi che hanno sollevato questa questione, perché mi dà modo di chiarire che il piccolo elenco che era stato fatto dei paesi era solamente a titolo esemplificativo, e per questo non ho nessuna difficoltà ad accettare l'emendamento proposto.
Thank you. I should now put Amendment 1 to the vote. Will all those in favor of the amendment please raise your voting card, and I ask that you hold it up until I thank you so that we have time to vote. You need to have a red voting card. Thank you. All those against, please raise your voting card. Thank you. Are there any abstentions? The amendment is adopted. We will now vote on paragraph 1 as amended. Will all those in favor of the paragraph please raise your voting cards? All in favor of paragraph 1 as amended, please raise your red voting card. Thank you. Will all those against please raise your voting card? Are there any abstentions? Paragraph 1 as amended is agreed to. We will now take paragraph 2 through 9 together. Does anyone want a vote on any of these paragraphs? With no request for a vote, paragraphs 2 through 9 are agreed to. I call Ms. Pipa from Ukraine to propose Amendment 2, which inserts a new paragraph after paragraph 9. Ms. Pipa of Ukraine, you are recognized for 1 minute. Is anyone from Ukraine prepared, or anyone prepared to introduce this amendment? Should we do 9 through 13? Does anyone who signed the amendment wish to speak? Dr. DeRitter, you're recognized for 1 minute.
Vielen Dank, Herr Vorsitzender. Es geht hier um eine Ergänzung, nochmal ausdrücklich zu betonen, dass insbesondere auch Frauen in dem Aggressionskrieg Russlands gegen die Ukraine unter sexualisierter Gewalt leiden. Und dies sollte, um das deutlich zu machen, hier nochmal ergänzt und daher auch betont werden. Ich bitte um Unterstützung dieses zusätzlichen Gegenstandes, der dann eben diese Formulierung so auch wiedergibt und eben diese Gräueltaten auch nochmal verurteilt und dadurch auch betont. Vielen Dank.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment? What is Ms. Campion's opinion of the amendment?
Per gli stessi motivi per i quali ho accolto l'emendamento numero 1, non posso accogliere il numero 2 proprio perché si tratta di un crimine universale. Non ha a questo punto molto senso restringere tutto questo a un'area geografica definita, ma deve rimanere, pur condannando certamente l'aggressione russa ai danni dell'Ucraina, ma deve rimanere un reato universale, quindi quanto più aperto a tutti i paesi del mondo.
Thank you. I shall now put Amendment 2 to the vote. Will all those in favor of the amendment please raise your voting cards? Thank you. Will all those against please raise your voting card? Are there any abstentions? Thank you. The Amendment 2 is adopted. We'll now take paragraphs 10 and 11 together. Does anyone want us? I'm sorry, 10 to 13. Let me start over. We will now take paragraphs 10 through 13 together. Would anyone like an individual vote on any of these paragraphs? With no request for a vote, paragraphs 10 to 13 are agreed to. I now call Dr. Fry from Canada to propose Amendment 3, which inserts a new paragraph after paragraph 13. Dr. Fry, you're recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think I spoke to this in the last session, but what I want to say is we always look at the perpetrator. We look to find ways to bring the perpetrator to justice. We have forgotten that the survivors need to have care. They usually suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, mental health problems, lack of access to health services, sexual and reproductive health services, and they also have a problem being ostracized when they get back into their societies. And so I am hoping you would support a survivor-centered approach in which we look at also not just helping survivors and supporting them, but using the survivors to find ways of detailing and having clear guidelines by which we could find out who the survivors are and be able to assist them and have data and statistical records on how things are working. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone wish to speak against the amendment? What is Ms. Campion's opinion of the amendment?
Sono favorevole a questo emendamento, lo trovo nel pieno spirito del supplementare item e anche efficace per dare maggiore concretezza al provvedimento.
Thank you. I shall now put Amendment 3 to the vote. Would all those in favor of the amendment please raise your voting card? Thank you. Would all those against please raise your voting card? Are there any abstentions? Amendment 3 is adopted. We will now take paragraph 14. Does anyone want to vote on paragraph 14? With no request for a vote, paragraph 14 is agreed to. We will now formally move to a vote on the draft resolution as amended. Would those in favor of adopting the draft resolution as amended, please raise your voting card. Thank you. Would those against please raise your voting card? Are there any abstentions? The draft resolution as amended is adopted. We will now move to consideration of the next supplementary item referred to us by the Standing Committee, Building a Comprehensive European Security Architecture Against Aggression, which is supplementary item number 7. There are 2 amendments to this item. I give the floor to Mr. Wilson of the United States, the sponsor of the draft resolution. Mr. Wilson, you're recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman and colleagues, war criminal Putin's murderous genocidal war against Ukraine has exposed the weaknesses of European security architecture. For too long, Moscow has posed as a legitimate regional stakeholder while victimizing the most vulnerable states. Outside of the high walls of NATO, OSCE participating states are left vulnerable to Russian aggression despite the norms and obligations enshrined in the Helsinki Final Act and the UN Charter. Russia and other would-be aggressors should be deterred from attacking other OSCE states. A mutually beneficial course of this assembly should be to promote the development of a security architecture that works not just for the strong, but for those who need it most, the smallest and most vulnerable. In particular, there are tragic examples of Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia, but also other states and peoples in Putin's crosshairs. In recent years, the security architecture has permitted Russian soft annexation of Belarus, its maintenance of illegal military formations in Moldova, and the illegal occupation of 20% of Georgian territory. In response, democracies need to facilitate the development of a credible and comprehensive European security architecture. Efforts should be made to ensure that all participating states have the protection they need to deter aggression. The OSCE Parliamentary Assembly can play an important role in this effort. There should be the appointment of a special representative to coordinate efforts within the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly and among its member parliaments to advocate for and implement a unified security strategy that works for all facing aggression. I urge my colleagues to adopt this supplementary item and begin the important work of building a safer and freer Europe for all to establish peace through strength. I yield back.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes Ms. Sparks of the United States for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I urge my colleagues to support this supplementary item. We obviously can say that and see that the security architecture established after World War II didn't work. Ultimately, it was set up for different reasons, but it created really a perverse incentive where we have all or nothing situation. If you're a member of NATO and you have one missile flying your territory or one of your child getting killed, will have almightiness of NATO go and to deter aggression. But if you are not, millions can be killed and die, and there is not a very easy recourse. And we've seen how it escalated the situation, and I have to agree with my Albanian colleagues when he pointed out it's not just a 10-year war in Ukraine,
It's what's happened in Georgia, it's happening in Moldova, and really in the Middle East and in a lot of other areas right now around the world. So I think it's a very serious discussion, and I appreciate my colleague having this item, the agenda, and I hope that we will have a serious conversation, because it is a serious conversation. We should not have these major wars in the 21st century with millions of lives destroyed and implications all around the world, creating instability, not just in Europe, but it creates instability all over the world and allows aggressors like Russia, China, and Iran advance even further. This is something that we need to have. This is something that is very serious, and this discussion needs to happen. How we can bring stability back in the 21st century, and with looking at new needs and aggressors that really taking advantage of a lot of weaknesses of the current system, but also how we can bring stability and deter that we wouldn't have such major wars happening in the future, or at least we can do whatever we take that aggressors understand that they're going to lose them. And I would appreciate and really highly encourage my colleagues and the representative of other parliament to support this supplemental. Thank you, Mr. Wilson, for carrying it. Thank you. I yield back.
As no other delegate has requested to speak, we will now move to consideration of the amendments submitted to the draft resolutions. Copies of the amendments have been made available. I will call the proposer of the amendment first, and then we'll call any opponent of the amendment. I will then ask the sponsor of the draft resolution, Mr. Wilson, for his opinion. I ask speakers to observe a time limit of 1 minute. Following that, I shall put the amendment to the vote. We are also required to vote on every paragraph to which there are no amendments, as we have done previously to save time and to avoid many votes on items that have broad support. If no amendment has been tabled to a paragraph, and if nobody requests a vote on a paragraph, we can consider it adopted. Needless to say, anytime a specific vote is requested, we will do so. Paragraph 1 to 10. We will now take paragraph 1 to 10 together. Does anyone want to vote on any of these paragraphs? With no request for a vote, paragraph 1 to 10 are agreed. Now we pass to the amendments. Amendment 1. I call Mr. Poturaev from Ukraine to propose amendment 1 to paragraph 11.
Thank you. Colleagues, we propose to add the widening of application of the Moscow mechanism on the human dimension. Why? Because this is really something that disturbs Russians, because they know how many crimes they committed against Ukrainian civilians. Just two figures, colleagues. According to our national police, since the beginning of this full-scale invasion, 8,800 civilians have become victims of enforced disappearance and remain illegally detained by Russians. And more than 10,200 people are considered to be missing. We even don't know what happened with them. So it is very important to use Moscow mechanism as wide as we can. So please support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against amendment 1? What is Mr. Wilson's opinion of the amendment?
Mr. Chair, I favor the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I shall now put amendment 1 to the vote. Will all those in favor of the amendment please raise their voting cards? Will all those against please later after the favor vote? Votes against? Okay, thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. Amendment 1 is adopted. We will move now to paragraph 11. We will now vote on paragraph 11 as amended. Who is in favor? Who is against 11 amendment? Any abstentions? 0. Thank you. Paragraph 11 as amended, agreed. We will now take paragraph 12 and 13 together. Does anyone want to vote on either of these paragraphs? With no request for a vote, paragraph 12 and 13 are agreed. I call now Mr. Frolov from Ukraine, Mr. Porturaev from Ukraine, to propose amendment 2, which inserts a new paragraph after paragraph 13.
Yes, colleagues, we propose to add and stress important role of peace formula that was proposed by President Zelensky and that was already discussed in bilateral meetings of President Zelensky with leaders of free world and democratic world, and which was also discussed during first peace summit. We think that it is important to stress on this formula by President Zelensky because it's really a complex plan for peace. And we strongly believe that there should be no alternative because this peace formula also is based on UN Charter, as I've mentioned the first day when we gathered for plenary session. So please support the amendment. It is important for Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against amendment number 2? Mr. Wilson, please, your opinion about this amendment.
Mr. Chair, I support the amendment.
Thank you. I shall now put amendment number 2 to the vote. Votes in favor. Votes against. Any abstentions? Amendment 2 is adopted. We will now take paragraph 14. Does anyone want to vote on paragraph 14? With no request for a vote, paragraph 14 is agreed. We will now formally move to a vote on the draft resolution as amended. Who is in favor of adopting the draft resolution as amended? Please raise your voting cards. Who is against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The draft resolution as amended is adopted. Thank you. We'll consider the final supplementary item assigned to use by the standing committee at our meeting tomorrow morning, followed by the elections of committee officers. The meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.